This is the Sacred Knowing of Is, Book 1 by Tisziji Muñoz, video series, interview number 7. I had some questions for you regarding chapters 66 through 70. From chapter 66, you title it, The Eye of Intuition Sees the Colorless Light Itself. What is the colorless light?
The clear light, the spiritual light, has more to do with the soul, the spiritual beingness of each being, and relates more to the essence, the heart essence of each and every being and everything, in fact. Sometimes in terms of the human state it shows up as unqualified peace, unconditional love, unqualified happiness, let's say unconditional humor, unqualified wisdom, and unconditional clarity, and liberated bliss. These ideas, words, and concepts relate to what this is as transcendent reality which every being in potential at heart is. Colorless, as colorless light.
From chapter 66 you write, those who recognize and open to the higher, more loving or selflessly pure consciousness must become transparent, clear to and beyond what is known as proneness to karmatic, solid or obstructed reactions to the actions or qualities of others or things. My question is, are you saying then that if one is open to a higher consciousness, they should not or will not be concerned or attached to any given outcome?
Well, that's relative to the individual and their karmic situation. Attachment begins with clinging. We call it attachment. And then attachment is maybe implying a negative condition, a painful condition. In other words, a condition or a situation, a thing or a being that we can't let go of. We don't give it room. So attachment then in this case implies a lack of space. And so spiritual practice is the cultivation of psychic space, which shows up as a higher level of creativity. And if we're talking about physical space, then it shows up as a much more relaxed spiritual sense of your body nature, your body physical being, and so on and so forth. So attachment as we know it gives way to, that is, in the heat of practice and in the burn of wisdom, gives way to generosity and givingness. So attachment is not giving, to a certain degree, and holding on to things perhaps appropriately. So there are some things you must be attached to, but attachment becomes again more giving. So after a while, there seems to be attachment because you're holding responsibility to certain things that you know you have to use in your functioning as a human being. And with enlightenment, you're more humorous about those things, more creative, see? More willing to change, see? And let it all go as needed.
What are some things that people should be attached to?
Well, we're talking now about a creative attachment to family. A creative attachment means you're willing to hold on to it as needed and let it go in a heartbeat, as needed. Everything is needed. See? You can be attached to the world, you can be attached to, let's say, life. You can be attached to it. Okay? It's not a bad thing to be attached to it. But when you're in spiritual practice, that attachment transforms into generosity. So then what you're attached to, or what you want to have for yourself, is really for others. So then it's no longer the attachment that you began with, which is for yourself. It's no longer for yourself. It appears to be for yourself, but it's for yourself to give to others. So then ultimately you're giving everything. So you're attached to things you ultimately want to give to others. So then it's not quite attachment, it becomes generosity. And of course you're willing to use, let's say, your car. Being generous doesn't mean you give your car keys to the first person you see to prove that you're generous and spiritual. I wouldn't recommend that. But you're able to do that if you had to, and not suffer it. See? And so then attachment in terms of suffering is one thing, attachment in terms of givingness, generosity, and the detachment is another thing. It seems to be a paradox, but you'll know as you practice and become much more aware of the fact that you have nothing to hold on to, that there is nothing to hold on to, yet everything is in place so that you can use it, and it appears to be things you hold on to, but you're not really even holding on to yourself. There's nothing you're holding on to. You're not really holding on to the earth either. Things are happening.
What about being attached to the guru? Do you have any comments regarding that?
That's a paradox, because you appear to be attached to the guru, but you're attached to your own freedom. So it's an attachment that could be considered creative and useful. It's like being attached to enlightenment or the spirit. It's no difference, because it's a thing to be attached to. It could be attachment to God, it's the same thing. You have to give that up. You have to give all the attachments up, because God is this, the realization of everything is nothing. Nothing is everything. It's a paradox. Therefore, these kinds of mysterious uses of concepts are considered incomprehensible in all the highest teachings. You can't know it. You don't know it. In other words, your self dissolves. When your self dissolves, then you're not giving up anything, but yet things are being given. What is left to give everything when there's no one there to give anything? See? It's a paradox. See? So in other words, you are okay where you are as a beginning practitioner, as a progressing practitioner, but there still may be a trace of suffering when it comes to giving. See? Attachment. See? Well, I don't know if I can give that much or give that thing to this person. See? Once the unfoldment occurs, then the heart knows. Then nothing is being given away, but everything is being given away appropriately and perfectly by nature of the heart, which is not the self. Then it becomes more an issue of selflessness and the perfection and the intelligence, creatively speaking, of the consciousness of selflessness, which then could also be considered heartfulness. Everyone is that, but not everyone is prepared to operate from what that is in truth. There is no attachment beyond the point, and there is no detachment beyond the point. They dissolve in the realization of heartful nature, heartness.
Does one need to practice being fearless in order to reach this higher selfless state that you're referring to?
Well, fearlessness is a concept. See? And we use the concept to maybe describe a certain kind of openness and courage to do things. Let's say an ability to move forward, an ability to stand up. These are not about fearlessness or fear in truth. But we're bringing the intelligence to people, or the awakened awareness to people, that they still may be influenced by fear. That means being less than their capabilities or their real needs. And so we are saying we have to practice opening into the, let's say, if we can see it, the reality, and you have to be shown the reality. Sometimes you don't know ordinarily what the reality of the spirit is. So we need to be guided into what the reality of the spirit is outside of our thoughts and feelings about it or our fears about it, so we can start to resonate with the expansion of the space that the spirit is in, or it lives as, or the space it occupies or permeates. This universe is permeated by the presence of the spirit. It's infinite. It's so subtle it seems to not exist. But yet without it we wouldn't breathe. Without it there would be nothing. And so when we get beyond our basic fear, ignorance and closed-heartedness and closed-mindedness, we start to open that up, then we start to see fearlessness is actually a way of breathing properly and doing things freely, but not ignorantly, but impeccably. More than just being wise and knowledgeable. We're talking about spontaneous creative intelligence, which is like miraculous, but that's our nature, is to be miraculously free and conscious of doing what we need to do, let's say to be part of the universe and to help other people. That's a natural family instinct. When the family is humanity, that's completely natural.
From chapter 67, you write, in the earlier stages of progression through restraint, discipline, and control of mind, heart, or body, in order to apprehend, modify, or change the mechanical process of these levels of consciousness, the conflict inherent in the redirection of one's energies toward expansion or freeing of consciousness, awakenment, and enlightenment is necessary. My question is, are you referring to the conflict that arises in oneself, or do you mean the conflict that may come from one's family and or friends when one begins to practice?
The second conflict you spoke about, relative to family, friends, and others, say, is based upon ignorance as to where fear comes from. See? As to where conflict comes from and where suffering comes from. It comes from your mind. It doesn't come from outside of you. See? It seems to come from outside of you. See? And when we're talking about the disastrous, let's say, situation when bombs are being dropped on us, we say, well, we didn't put that there. Well, yes, you did. You put yourself here. You didn't. You don't see yourself as being connected to that. You see yourself as trying to escape that. But your birth is a movement. It's an expression of agreement with everything, the universe, high and low, crazy and beautiful. It's nature. You say, well, I didn't want the earthquake. I didn't want the volcanic, lava in my backyard. I didn't want the mudslide there. Well, yes, you didn't have to want it, but you agreed to it because you're there. You're here with it, and so you have to live with that. See? And you're dying with it because you originally came here to die with dignity in some form or other and pass on into the spirit world with lessons learned, debts paid, see? Purified, ready to rise and expand into more universal awareness of reality rather than as a mere human being particle, let's say, see, that is assuming and presuming to be separate from all other particles, and that's impossible. There is no separation. There is an isness. See? And the God that you want to be separate from or hope to be separate from because you don't want to face it, or the Jesus or whatever it is you can't face, that's in you. That is you. At the heart level, it is what it is. You as a self-limited one, as Narcissus, as it may be called, like seeing yourself in the mirror and thinking that's you, you're duping yourself. You are deluding yourself into thinking that you are merely the form and not the spirit. See? The spirit has no form, it has no self. See? The self is assumed, it's a program. And yourself, like an actor takes on roles, can adapt itself and create itself and recreate itself ad infinitum. You can act like everybody in your neighborhood. You can even dress like them, pretend to be them. But you're not them. You're not even you, because you don't exist. Nobody exists, but we are allowed to think we exist because we have the consciousness of that which is the infinite. So with the consciousness of the infinite, we have a lot of potential. We don't have to be what we assume ourselves to be, and we don't have to be what we suffer at the same time. See? The paradox is then, well, if you have all this power, why aren't you using it? Why are you suffering when you have the kingdom of God within you? It lives, it abides, it resides within you. See? It's not, Jesus didn't say it was outside of you. See? He's pointing to what it is within you. And I'm not saying that as a Christian, I'm saying that as an artist. where does it come from, if not from within you? Now, you could see something up there and have a relationship to that, but where it's coming from is within you. You can look up there, you can perceive out there, you can recognize that, but it's you. It's coming from your source, which is nothing, which is a paradox. And that's the nature of the spirit. See, it's incomprehensible. So you are always the mystery, already solved, see, already understood and undone, already gone, yet always here.
Chapter 68, the title is Let Your God Be Beyond Beyond. What do you mean by beyond beyond? Are you implying that the word beyond has some greater meaning that is perhaps elusive to most people?
Well, true God, right, true reality, is in the absolute elsewhereness of the here now. See? Where else could it be if not here now? See? The nowhere is here now. Here now is the nowhere. And this is a paradox from the point of view of being subatomic particles of space, or etheric reality, which is what we are. See? We're dreamers, we are imagination. And that means we have super subtle intelligence awareness, etheric, let's say, matrixing. We are part of the etheric field, the subtle field that is not really physical. It shows up as a physical. Therefore, we are dreamers. We are realizers. We are visionaries, which means we are in a whole other time and space as visionaries, creating, let's say, out of the becomingness of the material universe and nature, we are creating reality. So we are space creators. We are space and, let's say, creative awareness, which is space. The creative awareness of space itself, which means we are all-pervasive, and the all-pervasive permeates us, spirit. We're talking now in terms of the spirit. It is all about the spirit. See? Spirit. We are spirit. And we need to know that spirit first. You are spirit, you came into the body. And then you started to breathe the body. Not as a self, but as a living being, a living spirit. And then you have been that all the time with all this culturing and, let's say, knowledge and experience leveled onto you, put upon you, and you have become that. You feel that that is what you are, more than the spirit of your origination. And we are once and always a spirit, capable of being anything and everything, capable of knowing not only ourselves, but the universe and the heart itself. And yet, for some reason, we choose to be less than that, when that is our gift. Our gift is the infinite. See, the God itself. The God point, the God, what is it? The God gene. Some scientists call it the God gene, right? The heart gene. See, they're the same thing. We are that. We are always that. See? And that is here now, always. And yet, what does that mean? See? It's the elsewhere here now.
From chapter 68, you write, to grasp truth is to intuit being free. Any spirit being who grasps truth as it is, free of self, ego, mind, body, world, time, energy, space, and matter, and consciously established in the ongoing realization of truth, is released, freed, and liberated from the cause and effect wheel of life and death. My question is, how can one recognize or know for sure what is true?
Well, it's a knowing beyond knowing. Maybe yourself can't know it. Maybe your head can't know it. Maybe it's the nothing you need to know. What if it were that? Well, the truth is nothing. And as soon as the mind hears that, it pauses. That means it enters nothingness. In that moment, it enters the truth of it. It goes silent. That's meditation. Okay? On nothingness. Silence. That's also healing. That's also peace. It's also a form or a taste of liberation. Nothingness. Emptiness. true is emptiness. See? What is true is silence, isness, itness, reality. These are words that are pointing to that which is the nothing, the emptiness, and the reality of spirit. See? The God of itself, beingness here, without thought, without self, without mind, without body, it just is. Radiant being.
Can realizing what's true be a gradual process for some, or for most beings does a higher state of consciousness need to be realized in order for them to properly see the truth?
Everyone is truth. See? Beingness here and now, reality. And it is important for us to know that we are beyond appearance. We are an appearance which is beyond appearance. Where does your appearance really begin or end? When you think about it, or when you intuit into it. Well, you're sitting on a chair, so you're part of the chair. The chair is on the floor, you're part of the floor. The floor is part of this room, so you're part of this room. And this room is part of this house. Right? It's part of this country area. And this country area is part of this region in the Northeast, right? In New York. And Northeast is part of the North American continent, right? Which is really relative to the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, which is relative to Europe, right? Which is, part of the Earth, right? So we are then part of the galaxy, because we are part of it. We are that. We are the reality now. And all these things that we're talking about, these things, these aspects, these locations, are part of the reality, the trueness, the oneness of what it is, the truth, the total reality of truth. See? Truth as totality. Totality of being, totality of reality. And that's a realization. It's a silent, very quiet realization. And in that quiet moment of realization, there is profound silence, which means is. See, is. Nothing. Clarity. That's spirit. Pure spirit. Not all the hoopla about spirit, but that's the peace of spirit. We need to enter the peace of spirit and work from the peace of spirit, which is not outside of you. See, which is you when you quiet down and you let it be what it is.